Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today is a day that we are going to start thinking about my fall crops. And also we're going to think about some of my winter crops. Now it is the first week in July, and it's kind of an odd time to think about fall crops, but I'm going to be starting some seeds and thinking about where I want to put my winter crops and where I want to put my fall crops. So first I want to show you my beds really quick and go over which beds I'm going to use and kind of figure out together how I'm going to use them. So this is a newer area to me. This is the early morning. Usually the sun is just blazing hot here. We've got squash and tomatoes. These are my new Vajayga beds, and I'll put my affiliate link down at the bottom so that you can see what they're about. Been really happy with this area. The only issue, and it's just starting to pull out of it now, is squash bugs. Somehow they found my squash over here, and there might have been a little bit of a nutrient deficiency, but as you can see, we're starting to get some healthy leaves come back. These are pepita squash. It's called Naked Bear, so I'm growing them for the seeds. We've got my tomatoes. These are starting to fruit. I'm really excited about that. And then we've got sweet potatoes over here. Now, sweet potatoes are a really long season crop. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to be harvesting those, but I'm figuring it's probably going to be in October. My tomatoes, normally I don't pull these out until October either, but I would really like to use these as a winter bed. I'd like to readjust some of my hoop houses that I put over the top for winter coverage. I've used double hoop houses on the other area of my garden to winter over vegetables, and they did okay. But this area is much warmer, and I'm wondering if we would get actual growth over here if I used a double hoop house. So what I'm thinking I'll do is pull out the tomatoes and the squash a little bit early and use one of these as a trial and see how it does. And then what I want to winter over is I want to winter over chichimisai, a little bit of kale, and some kohlrabi and cabbage. Now I won't be able to do too many of them because these are smaller beds. These are, instead of 8x4, these are 6x3. So we'll just see. Maybe I can plant things in between the tomatoes, keep the tomatoes pruned up and plant them in between a little bit earlier and then pull out the tomatoes. But we're going to plant the seeds for those today, and we'll talk to you about the varieties in just a minute. These are the beds I used over winter, my winter crops last year, and it didn't go so well. And what I'm thinking happened is these are in a lower area of my yard. You can see the slope right there. There's a slope over here, heavy slope over here. And it's in shade a lot of the day. Well, let me take that back. It's in shade the first few hours of the day, and it starts getting sun about noon. It's been perfect for the tomatoes and the peppers. The side over here gets a little bit less sun, so they're a little bit slower. But these beds, the ground continually froze, even though they had double hoop houses over them. And none of the vegetables died, but none of them grew at all, and there was a very small harvest out of them. So it was kind of a waste. So I'm not going to use these at all for either the fall or the winter crops this year. And I've done a couple of experiments on this hill. I've experimented in several of the beds. This bed right here, I had a single hoop house with floating row cover. So it wasn't doubled, it had floating row cover, and it did so much better than the double hoop houses down at the bottom. And what I'm thinking is this is a south and west, well, it's a west-facing slope with a south exposure. It's protected from the winds. And the cold air flows down the slope and leaves this area, plus the sun hits it. So it did a lot better here. So what I'd like to do is do one of my double hoop houses on the south side of my house where I showed you where the tomatoes are, and then do another double layer hoop house and a single layer hoop house up here, and do the same thing. Have cabbages, kohlrabi, and a little bit of kale. I am going to grow a lot of kale inside, but from my experience, the kale grown outside over winter is a lot sweeter. It was really tasty. I also need a bed to overwinter some carrots. So we've got to look at these beds and figure out how we're going to do that. So down to the bottom here, we have some strawberries. Now these strawberries have not done well at all. They give me very few strawberries. It's taken them 2 or 3 years to actually fill out. and they just don't do well here. I may change the area where I put my strawberries and pull all of these out, and maybe I can put carrots in here. I don't know, we'll see. Maybe I'll try strawberries here again and heavily amend the bed. This bed has peppers and squash that are going to go throughout the year. This is near the bottom of the hill, so it may not be a good area to overwinter. This bed also has peppers and chard, and I've used this to overwinter crops in the past, and it's been a good bed. So there's a possibility I could pull the peppers out early or plant in between the peppers, a little bit earlier for the winter crops. So this will probably be one of the beds for the winter crops. This is cabbage. It's too hot for it to head up anymore, so these need to be harvested and pulled out. These garlic need to be harvested. We've got one last kohlrabi from the spring that needs to be harvested. So this is going to be a perfect bed for fall crop. We've got chives that are permanent at the end over there, which makes it kind of difficult to put a hoop house over the top. And it takes up room. These are my cucumbers that I just planted. I think I lost one of them. It's kind of crunchy. But the cucumbers can be pulled early. This could also be a winter bed, but we've got my thyme there that I've got to decide if I'm going to pull out or not. We've got some that have reseeded themselves outside the bed that are doing well. So we might be able to pull the thyme and do a winter bed here. This one will definitely be one of my winter beds. I think I'm going to put carrots in here, carrots and beets, and I'm going to harvest this dill here shortly. And in a week or two, put the carrots and beets in here. So this bed is my onion bed. We've got a large kale here that I grew inside over the winter that's doing quite well. And we've got a tarragon plant that I might need to move. So this is definitely going to be a bed where I'm going to overwinter some crops. I'm going to put a hoop house up here. It gets a lot of shade in the spring and summer, but my peach tree is going to lose all its leaves and then it'll get full sun over the winter. So I think this is a perfect area to try to overwinter something. We've also got my Chinese mountain yams, and those will be harvested probably just before I fill up this bed. So I think the decision is we will put cabbages and kohlrabi and chichimesai in here, carrots and a few more veggies in there, maybe some kale. And then I think the next one down, when we harvest the cucumbers, I think this will be another overwintered bed. And we'll probably remove that thyme. So we've got the decisions made. Let's go down and look at the seeds. So here's my bucket of seeds. We've got chard. We're going to start some chard. Chichimesai. Several different kinds of cauliflower that I've got to choose from. Some beets, because we're going to start the beets in the pots. Cabbage and kale. Now we've got my tray of seed starting mix here, so that's ready to go. And then we've got my seeds. Now the hard part for me is deciding how many to plant, because lately I've developed a problem of not being able to get rid of extras and shoving too many things into my garden beds. They're not able to reach their full size. Now my plan is to plant both the fall and the winter crops at the same time. The fall crops are going to go into their beds as soon as they're ready, in 3 to 4 weeks, just as soon as they started sprouting. And then the winter crops, I'm going to up pot into gallon pots when they're ready. I want them to get a nice good size before I put them out into the garden. Because what I've found is in the fall, around the middle of August, near the end of August, our nights start to cool, September gets cooler, and October is even cooler. And October 15th is our first frost date, and that's usually about when we start seeing our first frost date. All of these crops are frost hardy, so I'm not worried about that, but the growth really starts to slow down as soon as the nights start to cool. So I really would like my winter crops to have a nice size to them before I put them out in their beds, because if I put them out in their beds at a small size, they're going to sit that way over the entire winter, and then they just tend to bolt in the spring because they feel like they're in their second year. So I want them a nice size, almost ready to harvest, so when in the spring, before it gets warm, they have time to just finally ripen up. I'd like the kale to be a size where I can actually be harvesting it over the winter. And I'm hoping on the south side of my house that there's going to be enough warmth that it will actually continue to grow. It'll grow slower, but I'm hoping it'll continue to grow. So that's my plan. Enough seeds for fall and winter. So I think we're going to start with the cauliflower because that's one where I need to adjust the spacing. I planted them too close this spring and not all of them were able to get up to full size. So I think in an 4x8 bed, I should be able to plant 6. I planted 9 last year and they weren't able to get up to their full size. So I need 6. So each of these cell trays, the Epic 6 cell pack that I love so much, not an affiliate, but I love these. So I think I only have room for 6 cauliflower, which is really difficult because I've got several varieties. We've got the deep purple one from Burpee Seeds. We've got clementine, which is yellow. We've got a snowball self-blanching. Purple of Sicily, which I grew this spring, which I absolutely loved. The green Macerata did grow, but it never got to full size because for some reason these are the ones that ended up being the most crowded. And it was bitter. By the time I harvested it, I kept waiting and waiting and it started to bolt a little bit and it was pretty bitter. So I may try this one again also just to see what it's like in the fall. And then I grew the amazing cauliflower and this one actually did the best. So I definitely am going to repeat this one. Okay, so I think my decision is I'm going to grow the amazing white, green Macerata, purple of Sicily, and a clementine. So that's 4 of them, and I will double up on the white one. So let's get these planted. Now I have enough seed trays that I think I'm going to double up. You see, I'm doing it again. I'm going to double up my planting and then find friends to give these to. I'm sure there's somebody who will take them and then I don't have to get rid of them. So I just want to make sure that I have enough. You know, I don't know what the seed germination rate is going to be like. It was good last year, but we're going to double up. So we're going to put a couple of seeds in each tray. So we're going to double up on the amazing. So we've got 2 of each of those in there. We're going to do 1 cell each of the green. I think we're going to do 2 cells of the purple of Sicily. Then we'll use 1 of the clementine. And then I always like to sprinkle a little bit of vermiculite over the top. It helps with the germination, holds in moisture. And if you have seeds that need light to germinate, which the cauliflower does not, but if you do, then if you cover them with just vermiculite, the light can get through and they still stay moist and you don't have to worry about watering them as much. Okay, so that's ready. Next, let's do the cabbage. I think I just want to finish using up my Copenhagen Market Early. That has worked really well. Now I had to run inside and get my Kohlrabi. This is, I know it's torn, it's kind of hard to read, but it's Super Schmelz. I'll put it up on the screen. Super Schmelz Giant White. They are absolutely huge and very sweet and tender all the way through. They don't get woody and I absolutely love this variety. And I try to grow Kohlrabi as often as possible. It just doesn't grow well over the summer. Now I found that Kohlrabi overwinters really well as long as it gets enough moisture. So you have to be able to get out there and hand water these things with a bucket or with a watering can, because if they get dry, then they get hollow inside over the winter. Next comes my kale. I absolutely love the scarlet kale. The color is gorgeous. This has been a great cold-hardy kale mix. There's several different varieties in it. I'm definitely going to purchase this again. But it's got some red Russian, that large blue kale that I showed you at the top of my garden beds, that was in here. The ones that are not in it though is the blue curly kale, and I absolutely love blue curly kale, so I'm going to plant some of those. Now I'm definitely going to plant enough kale so that I can have some inside in pots over the winter and some out in the garden that are overwintered. So the ones that I put in the ground for the fall are going to have to go in the spots where I want to overwinter them. Next is the Swiss chard. I'm just going to do 1 tray of the Swiss chard. This is going to be for indoor and outdoor growing. And the last one is Chiji Misai, which is a komatsuna and tatsoi mix, and it's absolutely delicious. I really love this stuff. So we're going to grow some indoors and some outdoors. The last tray is the Detroit dark red beets, and I really do like these also. And I start these in pots because I seem to get better germination in pots, and then I just transplant them very quickly outside. These will probably be transplanted in 2 weeks when I plant my carrots. Now these are all ready to go. I am not going to start these outside on the table like I've done my lettuce and some of my other vegetables. I'm going to start these inside because it is way too hot for these cool weather crops outside. And I've updated my grow room. Let me show you what my grow room looks like right now. Here we have my grow room. There's Calcifer. It's very sweet. And we've added some more racks. Now, I really wanted to start cuttings. I wanted to grow taller plants in here. I've got 2 orange trees and an avocado that I struggled to get enough light to and to keep them off the ground. There's carpet under here. I put splat mats down to keep the water off the carpet. We hauled everything out of this room, did a deep clean. Everything is outside right now. It's staying outside over the summer. But we still have our spot to start seedlings. This area right here turned out to be perfect for seedling starting, and we had enough room and different height shelves for different height plants. Down here is where I usually grow out my indoor tomatoes and lettuce and kale and Swiss chard. Put taller plants over here. We have one more area where we can grow semi-tall plants. We have another area that has just a different height. These are my old grow lights. I may switch those out for a different kind. It's just what I had and I didn't want to buy any new ones. So we kind of chained those there. We can put semi-tall plants there. And same over here. Calcifer needs a belly scratch. He loves belly scratches. He's just such a sweet kitty. You good boy, huh? He's never really allowed in the grow room, only when I'm here, so he's very happy to be in here right now. So this is my grow room. This is where the seeds are going to start, and this is where I'll grow them out until they're ready to plant. So thank you for coming along with me on this adventure. I would love to hear what fall crops you're planting, and in your area of the world, when can you plant fall crops? Do you have to cover your crops over the winter? I'd love to hear about what's going on in your gardens. If you like my videos and if they're helpful to you, please like and subscribe, share them with your friends, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.